episode number 264 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is Emily Greene, known professionally as Emily the Medium. She is a highly acclaimed psychic medium who specializes in supporting families who want to connect with the energies of their children or spirit babies at all phases of their journey, whether they're struggling in fertility challenges in the preconception phase or while pregnant, as well as helping individuals understand and master their own innate intuitive abilities. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome to the podcast, Emily.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to talk with you.
Me too. I'm excited to talk to you, especially about one of my favorite topics, spirit babies, intuition. I would love to get your background so the listeners can hear, and also how you figured out you have this gift.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm sure we could talk probably all day, so I'll try my best to be concise with how I describe everything. So, yeah, I am a spirit baby medium and a psychic medium, among other things. But those are sort of the primary ways that I'll use to describe myself. And I didn't actually start by working with spirit babies. I actually started doing traditional mediumship, where I was supporting people connecting to their loved ones on the other side. And that was the focus of my work for a very long time. And I was very happy there, and I felt very fulfilled doing that work. And I also did some death doula work and supporting people transitioning from life and their families and so on, and really felt, again, like I said, I felt very fulfilled, very happy with what I was doing in that way. And probably about 5 or 6 years ago, things started to shift because I started to have these basically energies coming in, these souls. And at first I didn't know that they were children. I was so used to kind of the mediumship reference point and framework that I just assumed that every soul that I was working with had just transitioned from life or had just passed away. And so there was quite a few experiences at the beginning of my exploration of the concept of spirit babies, where I had to really expand my mind and my reference points and my just really open my mind to it, because for whatever reason, I just never thought that it was possible. Before I was doing this work, I was like, I'll do it this way and this will be great. So I started to have these energies come in, and I have a few stories that I'll tell of how that first started to happen and how I realized that what I was working with and what I was communicating with were spirit babies. And I really started to kind of fully move into this work around the end of 2019. I just got this message, like, it's time. There's a lot of people who need support from this angle, and I've always been very passionate about wellness and fertility and so on, and so it just sort of unfolded very naturally. And now that happens to be a big arm and a big focus of my practice is working with spirit babies, working with families who are trying to conceive, working with women and families who are pregnant and communicating with the energies of their children pre-birth and post-birth as well. That's another piece of it as well. So kind of all across the spectrum, working preconception, working in the process of working with families who are in the process of trying to conceive, through pregnancy, during the birth process, and post-birth as well. So all across the board, which is just so beautiful. And I'm so lucky to be able to do what I do.
That's awesome. And I'd love to hear about the cases you had mentioned.
Yes. Okay. Amazing. For people who listen to me on a bunch of podcast episodes, I usually tell the same ones. And so they're like, oh, here she goes again with these stories, but your audience hasn't heard them. So I will tell them. So I was working with, I had a woman who came for a session with me, who had heard about me through friends of hers. And she came in, and what I used to do with these sessions is we would just really kind of leave them open. I would say, "What do you have anything you'd like to cover?" And sometimes people would share, sometimes they wouldn't. They would say, "I'd really like to do this," or "I'd really like to do that." She was just like, "I'm looking for clarity." So I was like, "Great, I can do that. We can work with that." So started to work with her, and as I was tuning in, I started to see this little girl through my psychic senses, and she was about 3 years old, and I can still see her clear as day. I can see the exact color of her hair, the color of her eyes, the dress she was wearing, the shoes she was wearing, everything. And so I just started to describe this little girl to this person, and she was thoroughly confused. She was like, I have no idea who this is. I have no idea who you're talking about. We were still kind of thinking that this was maybe mediumship. We were trying to figure out, was this a past child who was connected to her, or maybe one of her family members or friends? We couldn't figure it out. So then I went back to this little girl and I was like, who are you? Why are you here? What are you here to say? And she basically, through a process of continued communication, we figured out that this was actually the soul of the daughter, that this woman had miscarried about 2 years prior. We kind of put all of those pieces together, and this energy was coming forward to communicate different sorts of information about the miscarriage process. I also found out through this communication that this woman was trying to conceive, and that was actually her primary reason for coming to speak with me. And so we worked with this energy. We worked with the soul. We worked with this mother, and this energy said, I'm not coming back to you, but there is another soul coming in, and keep going, keep the faith. He's coming. I'm going to send you signs. She said, I'm going to send you balloons, red balloons. She saw one in the tree by her house the next day. And anyway, 2 months later, she emailed me, and she had conceived and now has a beautiful
Oh, wow.
son, who this little girl had said that she was supporting to send in.
Oh.
So that was literally the first experience. And I spent probably a few weeks after that experience just kind of going, is this a thing? Is this a thing that's going to happen now? And sure enough, it did. They just continued to come from far and wide, all of these different energies, and in situations where I would have never predicted that this could happen, in a situation with a woman who was in her 60s. And this was nowhere on her radar, but it turned out that she had a miscarriage when she was in her mid-20s, and this soul came in to kind of provide healing around that experience, because it was still something that she was really that was really hard for her to remember and to think about. So it just sort of unfolded from there, and I started to learn as I went and pick up as I went. Really, I just had to stay open to the whole experience, and stay open to what these energies wanted to say, and that they really wanted my attention, and they continue to. So that's how it started.
So interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of thoughts come in my mind. Miscarriages.
Yeah.
What have you gotten around that? From our vantage point, it could be like physical reasoning,
Yep.
and we look at all the different things medically, but from a
Yes.
spiritual perspective, from what you've seen and the information that you've gotten, what
Yeah.
have you gotten around that?
Yeah, great question. And like you, and I'm sure in your work, there's work with sort of the physical root causes of miscarriage and how it can happen and this sort of thing. And I make that distinction in my work often, where these energies will kind of tell me this was actually a physical reasoning for the miscarriage, which sometimes the person knows already. Yeah, they told me that we figured out that this kind of happened here. This is what happened. Other times they don't have a reasoning for why their miscarriage happened. So hearing that there was maybe something not quite right on the physical level that needed to be worked on, then we can kind of go into that. Okay, is this something your body is needing more of? Is there something that we need to address root cause? And so I can actually kind of work with that from the physical level. But you're right, most of what I'm working with miscarriage wise is sort of exploring the emotional and energetic causes or reasons for why this is happening. And what I will say is that, like anything, it's so individually specific. It's so specific from case to case, from person to person, from miscarriage to miscarriage. So I can't say that all miscarriages are like this, or all miscarriages, they all have this kind of core energetic or emotional root. But what I have seen is that there are some common themes, energetic or emotional common themes, that seem to sort of run as a common thread through many people who are having miscarriages. And, one of them is that miscarriages, as painful and devastating as they can be, most people, usually with some time following a miscarriage, will tell you that they were able to really take something from it, that there was some sort of extraction, there was some sort of teaching, there was some sort of growth, there was some sort of heart opening experience that they were able to have. Now, I'm careful with saying that because somebody who's just had a miscarriage is probably not going to want to hear that. They're going to be like, "That I don't want. I'm not interested in that."
Of
And
course,
so
yeah.
I think that it comes with time and with healing and with processing. Most people can look back on a miscarriage experience and go, "Ah, I feel that I now with time and with kind of hindsight that I can see now that if that pregnancy had continued, it just wouldn't have been the right timing for me, for my family, for my other children, this sort of thing." So there seems to be, in some cases in miscarriage, there seems to be kind of an initiation process that can happen. So I do see that a lot. Another reason is simply, timing and preparation. Sometimes an energy will come in to have a brief experience with a family, and then they always have intended to exit after a very short period of time. They didn't plan on kind of taking the pregnancy all the way through, or carrying to term. So I'll see that sometimes. And again, a miscarriage can bring up a lot for people, and it also can be sort of a preparation for the soul as well at the same time, where sometimes actually it has nothing to do with us. And we have the tendency, of course, as human beings to go, "What did I do wrong?" Or "What did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong?" So I really do want to be careful here, like around the miscarriage conversation, of not feeding or fueling any more sort of self blame or questioning or doubt, because sometimes it really is individual, also just to the soul and their wants and needs. And hey, I needed to have that experience for that 7, 8, 9 weeks of pregnancy. And that was my complete experience. I'm very happy with the experience that I have. I feel very complete by that. So I think that we have to remember that these souls are on a journey as well, just as we are. And we can have a perception of how we think that they want to have their experience, which is, having a full term pregnancy and having a healthy birth and growing up and having a life. But that's not the desire for every energy. Sometimes they do just want that brief experience. And so that can be one of the things that I'll see in with miscarriage that can be communicated by a soul. And there's all kinds of other things. But I think if I were to choose, a foundational kind of energetic around miscarriage, I would say that a lot of them do act as an initiation kind of process for a family, not just for a mother, but for other members of the family as well. For partners, husbands, wives, etc. It can be deeply confronting in both good and bad ways. And so those are some of the things that I see. Those are some of the common threads that I see around miscarriage.
Yeah, I actually asked because I had my own experience with a chemical pregnancy for
Okay.
my first, and
Yes.
it was I had a positive pregnancy, and then I just remember feeling an overwhelm of emotion,
Yeah.
and then I fell asleep and I had a dream.
Mm,
So just to kind of give you a little background,
yeah.
both my husband and I have brown hair. I
Okay.
have brown eyes. He has green eye, hazel eyes,
Yeah.
and in my dream, girl with long blonde hair came in, and she was sitting on a washing like a washer dryer
Yeah.
kind of thing, and she was like kicking her legs and playing around. She said, "Okay, I'll see you later," and she like left. She's like, "I'll come back."
Wow.
And basically I woke up and got my period.
Wow.
And I remember that so specifically because it was so vivid. And I happened to tell my husband and my mom about it. But like, what are the odds that we would have a blonde hair, blue eyed child given our own genetic expressions? So years later, like, I mean, a year and a half or something later, I had my first, who was brown hair, brown eyes. And it was just like, and then a couple of years later, I had my second, and she ended up, fast forward, having long blonde hair and blue eyes. And then I look back, it kind of came back to me, and I said to my husband and my
Mm.
mom, I'm like, was I dreaming that, or did I actually have that dream? And they both confirmed, yes, you did. You had that dream. You told us.
Wow.
So thank God I told them. But the reason I ask is because it was obviously, clearly not the time, and it was a different time. And I definitely think in my line of work, there is no mistake that that happened to me, because I get to share this story with other people listening. And I do feel like there was some kind of, I guess, for her, she was meant to come when she came.
Yeah.
And I have this story because it provides some kind of meaning, because why would I dream of a blonde hair, blue eyed child? I would have never imagined that I would end up with a blonde hair kid
Right.
based on just like what we look like. And I'm a little darker. People think I'm Latina, it's like I have a little darker skin. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just really
Incredible.
it was an
Amazing.
incredible thing. So that's why I kind of like mention it. Also, just to mention another thing is that I'm the only person with curly hair in my own family. And like maybe a year before my mom even conceived me, and she also had a hard time with me getting
Okay.
pregnant with me. And when before she conceived me, she had my
Mhm.
brother, she had a son, and she had a dream of a girl with curly hair skipping and jumping, which I
Wow.
used to love when I was little. And she was like, "Who's that girl?" And somebody said, "That's your daughter."
Wow.
So she had a premonition through a
About
dream
you.
about me,
Yes.
and I visited her. So it's really wild. So this is why I bring it up. And I know that obviously it's a very sensitive topic. It's not like to say that there's a specific reason, but I bring it up because there was certainly some weird things around from my own experience that I can say 100% I experienced. This isn't like just a belief. So that's why I'm so fascinated by it as well. And I've
Incredible.
had weird experiences with just hearing my patients describe their own premonitions or connections or signs. So I find this whole topic so fascinating.
It's amazing, Michelle. Thank you for it just makes me so excited listening to your story and even your mom's story and her premonition before she had you, because I think that it's actually more common than we think for people to have these sort of preconception or, in utero connections and experiences. And I think I love what you're sharing, because how that happened was just like you weren't trying for it. You were just sort of laying down, taking a nap or meditating or doing whatever you were doing, and this experience came in with this soul, with your now daughter, who just said, "Hey, I'm here right now, but I have to go. I'll be back." And what I love about that too is that even there was another soul, who your first child, who came in before her. So it was sort of almost like there was this kind of, no, I don't even want to say delay, because again, it's perfect timing. She came in exactly when she was supposed to. But you bring up such a good point, and it's a question I get asked about a lot as well, is when people have miscarriages or chemical pregnancies, or they transfer an embryo and it doesn't take, or what have you. They ask me that of, is that soul going to come back? Are they coming back in the future? Or I felt really connected to them, and I don't understand why this pregnancy didn't follow through, right? And I do find that it's, again, different for everyone. Definitely different for everyone. Sometimes energies come in and in a pregnancy, and they have a one-time experience for a very short period of time, and then they're complete. But I think more often, what I see often is experiences exactly like yours, where an energy comes in at a certain time, and maybe it's in hindsight we can recognize, oh, that I can see now that that wasn't the correct timing for me, for my family, for the soul, whoever. And then at a point in the future, maybe even not when we expect, like this being, we would think, oh, this is going to be my first child. No, it's my second child coming in, at that point in time, that they'll come back in. So that's definitely something that happens very often, is these energies will, come in for a period of time, they'll exit, and then they'll come back at some point in the future. And I think that that can be really comforting for a lot of people as well, where it's sort of like, okay, this does not mean the end. This is not a goodbye. This is just, I'll be back. I'll see you later, So anyway, thank you for sharing your story. I love it.
Yeah, that's it was just definitely something that I feel was so real. And that's one of the reasons why I personally subscribe to the belief that when people feel called to have a baby, that is not random. And that's why I'll fight to make sure I do everything to get them the baby. And I know that a lot of times they'll hear things or sort of, I guess, assessments on their outcome by many different professionals. And I'm kind of like, if you feel within yourself that that is not my future, and I know it's that knowing. I personally believe that that is real.
Yeah,
I really
I
do.
agree.
I'm sure you do based on what you do. And I kind of feel like there's a calling or that longing for a reason. And that's why I think that it is worth doing everything for.
Agreed, completely. And you bring up another amazing point, which is a question I get asked often too, as I'm sure you do, is that, okay, I've been trying for so long and it's been 10 years, or, I just had someone email me the other day, 20 years of trying to conceive and multiple miscarriages. And, people say, when do I give up?
It's
Like, when do I
heartbreaking.
know this isn't for me? Is this not for me? Should I just give up on this? Am I not meant to be a mother? And I asked them, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying this. I asked them exactly what you're saying. Do you feel do you have this longing, this desire? Do you feel like there is this baby, this child that is meant to come in for you? And the answer is almost always yes, absolutely. And it's like, okay, let's figure out how we're going to get them here, right? Let's figure out
Yeah.
how we can support you to get them here. So I completely agree with you, and that goes with first children. I was just talking to a woman the other day who had two children, and she was like, I have this third child feeling. I had this dream about this third child, and my husband and I, we thought we were done. We thought we were complete. We were close that door, it was done. And now all of a sudden I'm getting these dreams. I'm having these feelings that there's a third child wanting to come in. She's like, is that just me? Is that a biological thing? Is that just me kind of like, being nostalgic? What is it? And I say the same thing as you, which is, if you feel it, that there's something there. There's something there to explore. It's not random. It's not. It's not a coincidence that you're feeling that way. So
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because
yeah,
I think that that's what it is. I think that now, in some ways, science was never like really acknowledged a lot of things that have been really spoken about throughout history. And now there's evidence that we have premonitions where people will respond to appropriately to a picture that will be shown like within seconds later, and people will have the response earlier, and they have seen that there is some kind of premonition or some kind of sense that we have that hasn't always been acknowledged. And I think that because of that, because it's never been acknowledged, we tend to dismiss it within ourselves. And that's why I love having people like you on, because we have way more abilities than we have been told, than has been really acknowledged in our material world. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that and realize that and honor that within ourselves, that it's like a legitimate thing.
completely. And this is a whole, I love this that you're bringing this up, because this is a whole other kind of arm of my work and what I'm really excited about. And I can feel that you are too, just surrounding abilities and intuition. And, I was the child who was like having all these kinds of intuitive experiences and telling people about them and having everybody tell me I was like, I had an overactive imagination. I should just probably be quiet. So,
Yeah.
that was my
Yeah, that's
experience.
pretty much what happens.
Yep, every day, right? So I learned over time that, okay, we don't say those things around here, and you can keep those things to yourself or write them in a journal. And I think that that is whether maybe it's not my exact experience, but I think some people have some version of that experience, even if that's with their creativity, right? Oh, like, you gotta like rein that in, or that's not feasible, or you have to do something practical or whatever. So I think we're just not given the skills, the tools, and the empowerment ultimately
Hmm.
to trust our intuition and to trust our abilities. And so I'm very passionate about that as well, around supporting people in discovering, okay, how does their, what I call, their intuitive and psychic faculties and mechanisms actually work? How does it work for you as an individual? Because of course, just like anything, it's different for everybody. And I think that that really ties into pregnancy and fertility as well, because I think that it really is such a process, especially if you're having a challenging time, or you're it's taking a while longer than you would have hoped to conceive. I think that it really does, I don't want to say test, but it really does challenge our trust in ourselves and our bodies and our faith and our
It's
ability
true.
to surrender and our control and everything else. And that all ties in with this sort of intuitive psychic side of us as well, and what we're feeling through the process. And I feel, I have so many people come to me say, I am scheduled for this embryo transfer, or I've got this egg retrieval coming up, but I really just feel like I don't need it. I feel like I don't need IVF to get pregnant. I'm going to keep it on the calendar anyway. And then, sure enough, right before
Mhm.
their IVF round, they
I
conceive
see that
all the
so
time.
many
I'm sure you
times. I
do.
see that so many times. And I will say another thing is like, when do I know that what I'm doing is working as far as treatments? When I start to see people enjoy their life. I
Yeah,
know that sounds kind of crazy because they're not coming to me to enjoy their life. They're coming into me to get a baby. But when I start to see them finding a little more space emotionally and feeling a little bit more like just breathe, they're breathing and they're enjoying themselves and they're feeling a little less frustrated. I mean, frustration happens. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have
yeah,
any of that. But when I start to see them thriving a little bit more, that's when I know my job is working, because that at that point, very shortly thereafter, things will start to change, whether it's their menstrual cycle, their numbers, their ovulation, like things start to shift a little bit more, because ultimately that's what it is. I think that there's this kind of common misconception that you have to suffer through the journey,
yeah.
and that does not have to be the case. And ultimately, that's like, I want to end suffering
Mhm.
through that as a practitioner. So that I think it's like huge.
Yeah.
But a big part of it really is listening to yourself, listening to that intuition, coming back to that part of yourself that is so intelligent and it like really knows.
Yeah, completely. I couldn't agree more, and I love what you said around not having to suffer through the journey, because I talk to a lot of people, and not to say that their experience isn't valid, but I talk to a lot of people, as I'm sure you do, who are like, like I said, I was talking to somebody the other day who had been trying to conceive since, she was 21 years old and was now 40 years old and still didn't have the child that she had been trying to bring into her world since she was 21. And she is just like, they just reach this level of like, I just don't know what to do anymore. Do I keep going? Do I give up? Do I not? And so I agree with you. I think it's really quite beautiful when we can find that spot, no matter where we're at on our conception journey, or working with our body, our cycles, or things like this, where we, just like you said, where we find this kind of sweet spot of enjoying our life and feeling really open to the magic and the synchronicities. Because that's the other thing, is when people start opening up to this, and they start opening up to this communication, and to the concept that the possibility of communicating with the energies of your children before they get here is possible. And then they start
Mhm.
seeing all these things. I just had this woman reach out to me the other day. She said, I've always felt like ladybugs is associated with my next child. And she said, I was walking around and I felt this inspiration to go into this like China shop, this China shop where they repurposed China and kind of turn it into like cool new creations. And she said I was drawn over to the jewelry section. She's like, I don't usually wear jewelry, but I went over there, I booked it over there, and the first thing I saw was this kind of repurposed China that had been turned into a necklace with three ladybugs on it, right? And so she looks at that, and it's like, to everybody else around her, if she was to explain what the experience was, they'd be like, okay, you found a ladybug necklace, good for you. But for her, it was so profound and so magical. There's this real magical quality to that experience for her, where she felt in that moment so connected to the soul of her second child, who she was trying to bring in, that it totally reinvigorated her hope, her belief, her everything. Just feeling trusting in the experience. And so I think that's the beautiful part that I love to see people connect to too, is that enjoying their life, and also really staying open to all the magic and the synchronicity of what these energies can bring through when you kind of really start to communicate with them. And I mean, I have like so many stories, and I collect them because I like to share them to people and kind of go, hey, this is what's possible, and this can happen for you too, and everything else. So anyways, it's a beautiful thing to open our minds and hearts to exactly what you said, the realization that it doesn't have to be suffering.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I feel like stories are so powerful
Yeah,
because a lot of times they're very relatable and they also provide so much hope
yeah,
for people listening. And I also was wondering just what your take was, because I've noticed in my own practice an increase in cases. It just seems like a lot more people are going through this from a spiritual perspective. Like, or is there even like a different perspective that we're not seeing? Like, what is your perspective on why?
Yeah, great question. Fantastic question. I agree with you, and I see that as well. It's seems that more and more people I'm talking to, more and more people who are coming my way, it's almost kind of the exception now when somebody says I conceived within 6 months. That's like kind of amazing, and with no
Yeah.
difficulties, right? And so what I have received, and again, there's all kinds of different ways that I could explain this, but what I have received is that I believe that we're going through a great time of change on this planet. And I'm sure anybody who's looked around in the last, handful of years, even the last 10 years, would agree with that in one way or another, depending on our life experience and so on. We're going through a great time of change. There's a lot of things that are changing physically, structures, energetically, etc. I also believe that as a collective, we are going through a great time of healing and deconditioning. And this is why we're seeing this kind of explosion of therapy culture and, emotional healing. And this is all really coming into the mainstream, which for me is very exciting because I've been into this for, decades plus of just exploring all things to do with self-awareness and emotional healing and energy healing and trauma and all these things. And so I think that we as a collective, and especially women and men, but especially women, we have so much that is being held in our bodies, our emotional bodies, in our energy bodies, and ultimately in our womb, in our reproductive organs that is needing our attention, is needing our attention. And I think it's not a coincidence that so many people around the same age, of course, not everybody who is on a conception journey is exactly the same age, but around the same age, is kind of really going through this purging, this healing process. So I think that's a part of it from our down here, what we're going through as a collective, as women, as people who are trying to conceive. Now, from a spiritual perspective, from the energetic perspective, I really believe, and what I have seen time and time again, is that these children who are coming in, especially in the last 10 years, maybe more specifically in the last 5 years, but I think there's quite a range, is they seem to be bringing in a very different and very specific type of energy. And I'm only just starting to kind of collect data and case studies around this because it's only been, 5 to 10 years, and I'm kind of still watching a lot of these children grow up. But what I'm seeing is that they seem to be on an elevated kind of mission. They seem to be here to really create great amounts of change in our society, in the way that we interact with each other, in the way that we interact with the world and the planet and our natural resources and so on. And so I believe that part of it is that these great, beautiful, bright energies are coming in, and that we, as their supporters, as their parents, as their caretakers and their nurturers, there's a certain amount of awakening and awareness and healing that we need to facilitate within ourselves in order to best support these brilliant, beautiful children in their journey on Earth. So that's just scratching the surface of the entire conversation around why and what's going on right now, and why is everybody having such a hard time. And there's a lot to unpack there, but that's kind of what I received. And I think that we also have to sort of, brighten our radiance and our self-belief and our self-love and everything else in order to kind of match the frequency of the energy of these children coming in. So anyway, it's a topic that is incredibly exciting to me and near and dear to my heart. And I think that we have a lot more, I don't want to say control, but we have a lot more ability to create change around what's currently happening in the realm of fertility and fertility, etc. I think that that's part of what I'm really passionate about, and why I'm trying to share this work that I'm doing so much, is because I think if we start to bring into the conversation these spiritual, energetic, emotional conversations into the realm of conception and fertility, I think it can create a great amount of healing and also just success for these families who have been trying to conceive for so long. So, and I know you weave a lot of energetics and things into your work as well, Michelle. So I know you feel me on this, but it's a big conversation, and I could probably talk about it for another couple hours. But I would say that's my sort of synopsis of that.
Yeah, and definitely energetics for me is a huge aspect of it, like you said. But the reason why I'm so aware of it is because I meditate.
Yeah.
I think that it is so subtle, like energetics and energetic states are so subtle. They are very difficult to tune into with the noise of the world,
Yes.
of our material world. So it is really important to get quiet.
Oh yeah.
And even though it feels like you're not doing anything because we've been conditioned to do things to feel productive, it doesn't feel productive, but it is productive. Sometimes the things that are happening are even behind the scenes when you're getting quiet. You have
Yeah.
no idea what's happening on a conscious level, or you're getting downloads subconsciously. But that is one of the best ways, the quickest ways to tune your energy overall
That's it.
and to get yourself
Absolutely.
into a healing state. It's incredible. So, for
That's it.
people who are interested in tuning into their own intuition and are really fascinated by this topic, but also want to feel like, how can I tune into this? Or how can I connect to my spirit baby? Or how do I do that? What are your tips around that?
Yes, and I'm going to bring it back pretty much exactly to what you just said, which is, I think the power of meditation is so important, especially now. I mean, we're consuming more information in a single hour than most of our ancestors did in their entire lifetime. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
it's crazy. I mean, we are just being inundated with data, information, statistics, everything, personal experiences, stories, which can be very positive and very empowering, but it can also be this kind of create this information overload in the system. And so I think meditation, especially on a conception journey, and especially for those looking to communicate with their spirit babies, is absolutely paramount. It's almost non-negotiable.
Yeah,
I would almost say it,
right.
it absolutely needs to be a part of somebody's practice. And that doesn't have to be complicated. I think that meditation doesn't have to be a one-dimensional kind of experience. It can really be what you make it. It could be a walking meditation. If you love to hike, you can set the intention before you hike to, I want to have some contact with my spirit babies on this hike. It's a 2-hour hike. Sometime in that 2-hour experience, I want to have some experience with them. So it can be kind of more active. If it really works for you to just do sort of more passive meditation, you can lay on a meditation mat, or lay in your bed even, or lay in the grass and closing your eyes and bringing consciousness and awareness to your breath, and slowing down the heart rate, and slowing down the kind of the busyness of the mind, and then just sitting in what I call quiet receptivity. I think that that's the sweet spot. That's
The
the state.
receptivity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's everything, because the thing is that it's not that some people say to me, I'm not getting anything, or I'm asking for this communication, it's not coming, or I don't get signs, or I don't get dreams, or things like that. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that we are always receiving. We are literally always receiving, or I should say, information is always being transmitted to us. It doesn't always mean that we're receiving 100% of it, though. And so I think that if we can really carve out the time in our day, in our week, even just a few minutes for quiet receptivity of, I'm here, I'm available, I'm open, just saying 3 simple words out loud or in our minds, and just being as quiet as possible. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. Sometimes the mind is going to be busier, and we're going to have dialogue, and there's going to be things going on. But over time, what you'll notice is that as you start to trust yourself more, and as you start to be more consistent and show up for yourself more in that space, more things start to happen. You have an image of your future child, or you get a feeling in your heart, or you have a feeling of, oh, I really need to reach out to so and so, or I need to go for acupuncture next month, or during my cycle, or whatever the case may be. And I think that there's so much there when we can just surrender into that kind of receptivity. I also think guided meditations are really powerful. I have a spirit baby meditation I'd be more than happy to share with your audience if someone's looking just for a way to, okay, how do I start? I want to connect. What do I do? And so I'd love to share that with your audience if that would serve them.
Of
Um,
course.
and then beyond that, I think once we start to build that trust and that consistency in meditation, we can start asking for communication, whether that's in a form of a dream, of a sign or a symbol. And what happens is that not that, all of a sudden our spirit baby started communicating with us all out of nowhere, it actually is just that we are more aware of it now, that we are more receptive, we're more available for what has always been there, for what was always coming through. We just weren't able to really kind of receive it, grasp it, hold it. And now we are. And so we're seeing more. And that's what they say about synchronicity is like, the more I recognize them, the more I get. The more I see 1111, I see 1111 once and I notice it, and now I'm just seeing it everywhere. And that's not a coincidence, right? That is because you are paying attention to something with your awareness. Your awareness is incredibly powerful, right? And so when you put your awareness on something and you notice something, you acknowledge something, wow, I just saw this beautiful blue butterfly and I feel like that was from my spirit babies or whatever, then that experience of seeing more and more and more blue butterflies starts to increase and increase and increase, because where our very simple energetic teaching, where our attention goes, our energy flows, and that goes for
Yeah.
this as well. So that's what I would say, kind of for somebody who's just starting to open up to the concept of connecting and what can they do. And I think starting with meditation in whatever form that looks like for you is the best place to start.
Yeah, 100% agreed.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can keep talking to you for hours because I just love this topic. It's so
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah.
And so, for people who are listening and would like to learn more about you or work with you, how can they find you?
Yeah. You can find me at my website. It's emilythemedium.com. And I'm pretty much the same all across the board. On Instagram, same thing, Emily the Medium. I also just recently published a book all around the topics that we just talked about. It's called A Cosmic Bond, Communicating with Your Spirit Babies from Preconception to Birth. And it really kind of covers everything we talked about and more: communication, preconception, pregnancy, birth, the energies of these new children, kind of cover it all. So I would say those are three best places to connect with me and my work.
That's so exciting, and
Yeah,
congratulations on your book.
thank you so
And
much.
also be sure to send me the link for
The
the meditation
meditation.
that you had mentioned, and I'll put that in the episode notes for the listeners to see.
Okay,
And
great.
Emily, thank you so much for coming on. Just love your energy and love this topic, and had a great conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me on and allowing me to connect with you and your audience. I'm very grateful. This was wonderful.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.